The graveyard shift at the gas station was my least favorite part of the job. It's always eerily quiet out here, surrounded by nothing but dense woods and the occasional passing cars. But I have to do it as the pay was how I get things going on campus. Tonight was no different, just the low hum of the neon lights and the oppressive darkness pressing in from all sides. It was just past midnight when headlights pierced the gloom, cutting through the darkness like a blade. I glanced up from behind the counter, trying to shake off the creeping sense of unease and sleep. A weathered sedan rolled up to the pump. The driver's door creaked open, and out stepped a tall figure shrouded in a dark hood. I forced a smile and called out, "Good evening. How can I help you tonight?" The stranger didn't respond immediately. Instead, he shuffled over to the pump with an unsettling calmness. My heartbeat quickened. I was scared and uneasy. I walked back into the counter, watching him through the glass as he began filling his tank. His movements was giving me the chills, and I was no longer feeling safe and comfortable with this stranger. As my anxiety grew, I quietly reached for the phone under the counter and dialed 911. "Hello, I'm at the gas station on Highway 27. There's a man here acting strangely. Can you send someone?" The operator's calm voice was a lifeline. "Stay on the line. We're dispatching an officer now. Try to remain calm." The stranger's behavior grew even more suspicious. He seemed to be meticulously studying the security system, occasionally crouching to examine the wiring and the control panel near the side entrance. His movements were slow and deliberate, as if he were trying to avoid making any noise that might alert me. I watched him on the security monitors as he began to move around the station. He approached each window with a curious intensity, peering inside as if trying to gauge the layout of the building. He even stopped at the window closest to my position, his eyes scanning the interior with unnerving scrutiny. I held my breath, hoping he wouldn't notice me hidden behind the counter. The stranger's actions grew more erratic as time passed. He seemed to be testing the strength of the doors and windows, pushing and pulling with varying degrees of force. He occasionally paused to listen intently, his head tilted slightly, as if trying to catch any sounds from inside. The unsettling part was the way he seemed to know exactly which parts of the building to focus on, almost as if he had some prior knowledge of the station's security features. At one point, he pulled out a small flashlight and began to inspect the areas around the locks and hinges, his beam of light flickering intermittently. It was clear he was looking for weaknesses or vulnerabilities, but the flashlight also revealed his tense, focused expression. Each time he glanced around, his nervousness was evident, suggesting he was aware of the risk, but was determined to proceed. As the sirens approached, he became increasingly frantic. He hurriedly stuffed the crowbar and flashlight into his bag, glancing nervously over his shoulder every few seconds. The once methodical approach turned into a hurried scramble. His movements were rushed and clumsy, a stark contrast to the calm, calculated demeanor he had exhibited earlier. When the sirens finally reached our area, the stranger's face was a mask of fear. He made one last desperate attempt to force open the side door before abandoning his efforts and fleeing towards his car. His retreat into the fog was marked by a frantic, stumbling run, disappearing into the darkened woods as he tried to escape the impending confrontation with the police. As they left, I leaned against the counter, feeling both exhausted and profoundly shaken. The night was still quiet, but now it felt heavier, more oppressive. The encounter had left me on edge, reminding me just how vulnerable I am working alone in this remote gas station. I took a deep breath and returned to my duties, the flickering neon lights casting long shadows across the empty station. I knew that staying vigilant and prepared was crucial, especially during these dark, isolated hours. My name is Emma. Last month, I had a big operation on my belly. The doctors did their best for me and fixed me up in no time. But I had to take some strong medications that made me feel weird and sleepy. One evening, my husband Jake had to go to a fancy work dinner. I knew it was super important for his job, so I told him to go even though I felt icky. "I'll be fine," I said, trying to sound brave. After Jake left, our house felt too quiet. The medicine made everything fuzzy. I kept dozing off and waking up, not sure if I was dreaming or awake. As night came, weird things started happening. The The shadows on my wall looked like they were dancing. I heard creaky noises I never noticed before. My tummy felt all fluttery, like something was wrong. I tried to shake off the feeling, telling myself, it's just the medicine playing tricks. But the scared feeling wouldn't go away. Then I heard something that made my heart race fast. Footsteps. Slow, creaky footsteps coming up our stairs. I wanted to yell for help, but the medicine's effect was just too strong, and I was too weak to even let out a whisper. My voice came out tiny like a mouse squeak. I lay there, stiff as a board, too scared to move. The footsteps got closer and closer. Then, in my doorway, I saw something that made my blood turn to ice. A tall, dark shape was standing there, watching me. My head felt spinny, and everything went black. The next morning, Jake found me passed out in our messy bedroom. He looked worried and asked what happened, but I couldn't remember anything clearly. Now, weeks later, I still get scared being alone in our house. Some of our friends say it was just a bad dream from the medicine. Others think our house might have a spooky visitor. I don't know what really happened that night, but I do know one thing for sure. I never want to feel that scared ever again. My name is Emily, and this happened at a point where I was in a very difficult position in my life, and things weren't exactly easy. It all started when I saw an ad online. Experienced house sitter needed for 2-week stay. Generous compensation. As a struggling writer trying to make ends meet in the big city, it seemed like the perfect opportunity. The owners, Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood, were a wealthy couple going on a cruise to celebrate their 30th anniversary. When I arrived at their mansion, I was in awe. It was like something out of a fairy tale, 3 stories tall, with gleaming windows and a perfectly manicured garden. "It's a special house," Mrs. Blackwood said as she handed me the keys. "Take good care of it." There was something in her eyes. Was it worry? But before I could ask, they were gone, leaving me alone in the massive foyer. The first few days were uneventful. I spent my time exploring the house, writing in my journal, and enjoying the luxury I'd never experienced before, but making sure I was doing the job I was hired for. I could say I forgot about my troubles those few days. But on the 4th night, things started to change. I woke up to the sound of classical music playing softly downstairs. Confused and a little scared, I crept down the grand staircase. The music was coming from the ballroom, but when I opened the door, it stopped abruptly. The room was empty, the old record player silent. The next morning, I found a note on the kitchen counter. It was in elegant handwriting and simply read, "Please check the back door." I hesitated, but decided to follow the instruction. When I reached the back door, I found it slightly ajar. My heart raced as I realized someone might have entered. I double-checked all the locks and decided to call the Blackwoods. Mrs. Blackwood answered, sounding concerned. "We didn't leave any notes, Emily. You should call the police." The police arrived, and after a thorough search, they found nothing amiss. "Probably just a prank," one officer suggested, but his words did little to comfort me. Determined to stay alert, I decided to set up my own system. I placed small, discreet objects at each entrance that would be disturbed if anyone entered. I also started a log of every unusual event. A couple of nights later, I heard footsteps above me. This time I was prepared. I quickly checked my log and found that one of the objects had been moved. I gathered my courage and quietly made my way upstairs. As I reached the top floor, I found a door slightly open, leading to a study I hadn't seen in the house before. Inside, the walls were lined with books, and a desk sat in the center. On it laid a stack of letters, all addressed to Mr. Blackwood from various legal firms. I pieced together the story from the letters. The Blackwoods were embroiled in a legal battle over the ownership of the house. A distant relative claimed it was rightfully theirs, and the case was still pending. Suddenly, everything clicked. The music, the note, the open doors. Someone was trying to scare me away to make the house seem unsafe. Armed with this knowledge, I contacted the police again and presented the evidence. They set up surveillance and soon caught a distant cousin of the Blackwoods sneaking around, trying to create disturbances. It turned out they were trying to scare me into leaving, so they could make a case that the house was neglected and unsafe. When the Blackwoods returned, they were grateful for my persistence, and offered me a generous bonus. I used it to kickstart my writing career, knowing that I'd faced my fears and come out stronger. The experience taught me resilience, and I found new confidence to tackle the challenges ahead.